So remember that video that I uploaded saying, hey, I'm back? Well, that was 3 months ago. I didn't even realize how quickly time passed. So you might be wondering, well, where exactly did you go? Well, I'd like to inform you I was playing this beautifully awesome game called Hollow Knight. I put so much countless hours into this game that I absolutely fell in love with it, and I was willing to try out 100% Steel Soul. So, if you don't know what Steel Soul is, basically the premise of it is you get one life. If you die, it's over. Yeah, pretty hard, right? But I was attempting to do it 100%, so you can imagine how difficult that would be. There is this sort of mechanic in the game called bench warping, where if you leave the game and rejoin, you'll end up at the bench you last sat on with full mask. Throughout the run, I will bench warp, but that's only just for simple fast traveling, and Steel Soul would be way too annoying if I couldn't bench warp. But I am making one rule about that. If I ever feel like I'm in a situation where I am maybe 1 or 2 masked, and I feel like I'm in danger, then I can't bench warp. In this video, I'm not going to show like any of the clips where I die or any of my runs that were failed. Nah, we're just getting straight to the meaty stuff, the one run that I completed. So sit back, grab yourself a snack, and enjoy. So first I started off as you do, and then I began collecting money because you need a lot of money for 100%. I then headed over here, headed down and grabbed the Fury of the Fallen, and then headed out to Dirtmouth. In Dirtmouth, I then head down to the Forgotten Crossroads, proceeded downward, got this grub, did the Aspid Gauntlet room, bought the Stag Station, and then I saved 2 other grubs. I then killed False Knight and got the City Crest. I then got Vengeful Spirit, and then proceeded up to Green Path. In Green Path, I did this little squint skip to, well, it's a skip. I then found this bug doing a dance or having a seizure, I'm not really sure. I then saved Zote, and then killed Vengefly King. I then fought Hornet, and defeated Hornet. After that, I then got the Mothwing Cloak. I then picked up this Wanderer's Journal, got the Stag Station, and then headed back to Forgotten Crossroads to kill this pregnant Gruz mother. I then bought Shaman Stone and a Notch Charm from Salubra, saved Sly, headed back to Dirtmouth, and bought a Mass Shard from Sly. I then headed to the Fungal Wastes, where I then took out the Shroomle Ogres to get a Charm Notch. I then headed into the Mantis Village, and then got Mantis Claw. After that, I headed down and got Dashmaster, and then challenged the Mantis Lords. I then defeated the Mantis Lords, and then went up and got Mark of Pride and this Hollowness Seal. I then headed to Deep Nest, and in Deep Nest I saved Zote, grabbed this King's Idol, and in the failed tramway, I then headed over and grabbed the pass. I then headed to the tram, activated the tram, headed to Ancient Basin to then grab this Veil Ore. I then headed through Kingdom's Edge, up into King's Station, and then bought the Stagway. I headed up and got this Hollowness Seal, and then into the City of Tears. I took out the Gorgeous Husk for 420 Geo, and now with a bunch of Geo, I upgraded my nail twice. I then headed over here, grabbed the Hollowness Seal here, and then went and sold all my stuff to Lem. I then went back to Dirtmouth, into Sly's shop, to then buy a Mass Shard. And then I also bought the Lumafly Lantern. I then grabbed the Hollowness Seal in the well, and then got my 3rd Mass Shard from the Grubfather. I then completed my first mask by getting the 4th mask shard in the Gome area. I then got another mask shard in Queen Station, opened up the Queen Station Stagway, grabbed this Hollowness seal in the Sporg room, and then this Wanderer's Journal in the other Sporg room. I then headed up to Leg Eater and got Fragile Strength, and then headed back to King Station. I then sold all my stuff to Mr.
Velmi Artred.
And then proceeded upward where I saved the scrub, got this bench, and then the map from Cornifer. I then got the simple key, and then equipped my Fragile Strength. I then headed over into Soul Sanctum, fought this idiot, got Soul Twister, and then fought this bigger, cooler idiot. After he threw his little tantrum, I then killed him, and then got Desolate Dive. I then proceeded to save this cutie. Ha! You see what I did there? I called him a cutie, not an idiot. Then, for some weird reason, I grabbed this rancid egg, which makes no sense, because I'm in Steel Soul. Ha! Who's the idiot now? Then after heading down, I opened up the Royal Waterways, then proceeded back to Dirtmouth, where I then bought Gathering Swarm from Sly, Wayward Compass from Ismeralda, then in Forgotten Crossroads I got a Charm Notch from Salubra, and then I equipped Shaman Stone. I then headed to Crystal Peak, where I then saved this grub, pogoed up, and got this King's Idol. Then I fought and defeated this Benchwarmer. I grabbed the shop key, and then got Crystal Heart. I then saved this grub, got Deep Focus, saved this other grub, and then proceeded back to Dirtmouth. I then headed back to King Station, and then sold more stuff to Lem, and then headed back to Dirtmouth, where I then bought the Elegant Key and another Mask Shard from Sly. After that, I then headed back to Soul Sanctum and opened the door with the Elegant Key. I then fought this guy, not an idiot, and then received Shade Soul. I then opened the Stagway in the storage rooms. I then headed down towards Ancient Basin, then grabbed this Wanderer's Journal, then headed towards Broken Vessel. I then picked up this simple key, killed this dude, and then this dude, and then started the Broken Vessel fight. I then took out Broken Vessel, and then got Monarch Wings. I then saved this grub, then got this bench. After that, I then opened up the Hidden Station Stagway, and then proceeded back to Forgotten Crossroads. From there, I went over to the Blue Lake area, traveled across the Blue Lake, and then headed up towards Resting Grounds. I then got the Dream Nail, after that I got Dream Shield, then opened up the Stagway, and then headed down this tomb to then save a grub, and then get Soul Eater. I also got this Hollowness seal, and then headed back down to the King Station area. I then got this Wanderer's Journal, sold more stuff to Lim. Then I was back to Dirtmouth, where I then headed back to Forgotten Crossroads, and then got Grub Song from Grubfather. I then headed down into the Brooding Moloch area, fought, and killed Brooding Moloch. And then I got another Mask Shard. I then took a bath with these guys, then did the Aspen Challenge Room to then get Glowing Womb. I then headed back to Dirtmouth, headed up towards Crystal Peak, fought the angry Benchwarmer. He was really mad I took his bench, so I just had to kill him. Then I got the final mask shard for my next mask. I then fought these guys who worked for Benchwarmer Dude, headed up into Hollownest Crown, and then grabbed the Pale Ore. Then proceeded out of Crystal Peak, then went back to Hidden Station, where I then fought the Dream variant of Broken Vessel Lost Kin. I'd be lying if I said it took me one try. Call me a faker, but if it's the rules of Steel Soul, it's the rules of Steel Soul. I mean, I'll take it. I then collected his Dream Essence, and then went back to Queen's Station, where I then opened a bank and put all of my Geo in it. I then headed out, and then went back to Resting Grounds, where I then got a Hollownest Seal and a Pale Ore from Seer. I then headed back to the bank, and as planned, Mirabelle was gone. I then headed back to City of Tears, and then opened up the Pleasure House. I then headed in, equipped Gathering Swarm, and then beat the crap out of Mirabelle. Like, give me my money back. I then sold more stuff to Lim for more money.
Oh, Paul.
And then upgraded my nail once again. I then headed over to Salubra, and then bought another Charm Notch, and Long Nail. I then headed back to Dirtmouth, where I then purchased Sprint Master, Heavy Blow, a Soul Vessel Fragment, and then another Soul Vessel Fragment. I then headed up and out of Dirtmouth, through King's Pass, and into Mato's Shack, where I then learned Cyclone Slash. Always remember to bow to your nail masters. I then went and got Joni's Blessing, and then fought and defeated Yorb. I then headed back down to Dirtmouth, went to King's Station, and then to Kingdom's Edge. I got the Wanderer's Journal, and then headed out of Kingdom's Edge. Now going back through King's Station, I went into Royal Waterways, fought, and defeated Dung Defender. I then picked up Defender's Crest, did this lever switchy thing, and then did this gauntlet room I was scared of because I died to it multiple times throughout my 100% run. Not Steel Soul, but another run. It actually wasn't as hard as I thought it was, and yeah, I don't know. I then got Isma's Tear. And then saved this grub. I then headed up through the most annoying NPC's house. I hate you. And then I went back to Green Path. There I then went into Sheo's shack, where he then taught me Great Slash. I'm not sure if it was right here or not, but I did get Descending Dark somewhere around this point. But I completely forgot to record, so, you know, I just thought I'd let you know. I then went back to Grubfather for something, I forget what, but I just ended up getting a bunch of Geo. I then went back to Queen Station, up through Fog Canyon, and then I went into the Overgrown Mound to then receive Howling Raids. After that, I headed back to King's Station again, back to Kingdom's Edge again, and then headed to Oro's Shack to then learn Dash Slash. Again, always remember to bow. Then I got Quick Slash, got the Scrub, and then started the Hornet Sentinel fight. Now, I was absolutely shaking at this moment because I know Hornet can make you screw up when you're under pressure. But I ended up taking her out with only 2 masks of damage. I then got the King's Brand, Hornet then saved me. And then I headed back towards King's Station, where I then did this Sentry Gauntlet area to then receive my first Soul Vessel. I then headed to Hidden Station, where I then opened up the Abyss, where I then got Abyss Shriek. Then pogoed on a few siblings, turned the lighthouse on, and then got Shade Cloak. I then picked up this Arcane Egg, said hello to Hornet. I then headed back through Kingdom's Edge, and then got this grub in this little hive area. I then took the tram back to Deep Nest, and then I got Sharp Shadow. I then went back up in the tram, headed back to Ancient Basin, then up through Kingdom's Edge, where I then fought this Great Hopper, got this King's Idol, and then headed into the Colosseum. I then talked to this dude, took a little bath with this guy, and then I fought and killed Pale Lurker, unfortunately. Like, why do they gotta make it so sad? Anyways, I then bought the first trial, then beat the first trial. Sorry, Zote. And then got my Tri-Notch. I then equipped Soul Catcher, bought the second trial, started it. And there was this point where I actually got down to 1 mask, and I was freaking out. I did get a heal off, but then, like, immediately I went back down to 1 mask. I then was able to heal up again, and then get back down to 1 mask again, but eventually I got a heal off, and then another heal off, which then ultimately helped me to beat it. I then defeated Trial 2, and then got my Pale Orb. I then headed out, equipped Sharp Shadow, and then took the tram back to Deep Nest. Now, I have died twice in my Steel Soul runs to Nosk, so I was scared. I didn't know how this fight was going to go, but hopefully I'd be able to win. But with enough patience, I was eventually able to defeat him with 2 masks. Like, scary fight, seriously. I didn't think Nosk was this hard. Anyways, getting this Pale Orb felt so satisfying, and now I felt like nothing could stop me. I then headed up through Distant Village into Hera's Den. I then used the shortcut to get up there just easier. And now it was time to Dream Nail the first Dreamer. I then absorbed Hera's essence, energy, whatever. Talked to Hornet about how I essentially just killed her mom, but she's cool though. Then I went back to Dirtmouth, where I then went to Sly's shop, and then got Nailmaster's Glory. I then bought all the mouse from Esmeralda's shop just for future reference. Then I headed back down to Forgotten Crossroads. Then I headed back to Grubfather. I forgot what I was expecting, but I just ended up getting money and a rancid egg. Anyways, I headed out of Grubfather, then down into Fog Canyon. I picked up this Charm Notch in one of the most scary rooms. I then headed inside of Monomum's archives, started the Umu fight. Then after waiting a billion years for Coral to finally do his final, I then defeated Umu with 1 heart mask, whatever. I then talked to Coral. He gave Monomon her face back, and then I Dream Nailed her and sucked all her energy. I mean, absorbed. I then talked to Coral again and said my farewells. Headed out of the Monomum's archives, saved this little grubby guy, then headed to Keek Station. Then I proceeded upward towards the Watcher Knights. I killed this dude, opened up the gate. I then headed up, broke the ceiling, cut the rope to then crush one of the Watcher Knights. I then started the Watcher Knight fight, and then killed 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 Watcher Knights. Now with that, I headed up, got this Hollowness Seal and the Geo in this chest. And then I proceeded upwards towards Lurien, whatever. I then Dream Nailed him, took all of his essence from myself. And now, with the final Dreamer gone, it was time to open up the Black Egg. I then proceeded to open up the Black Egg. Then inside I read the sign so I would now know the percentage of where I was at. Now knowing that I was at 74% completion, I knew that there was still a bit to do before we finished. I headed out of the Black Egg Temple, and then went back to Grubfather, where I then collected more Geo. I then headed up towards Dirtmouth, bought the Simple Key, headed back to Queen's Station, where I then headed through the Fungal Wastes, then bought Fragile Heart and Fragile Greed from Leg Eater. Then I started the Elderhue fight, and then took him out. I then used the City Crest to open the door to City of Tears. I then proceeded downward and found this note on Lem's door. I then went out and talked to him a bit, and then somehow he beat me into the store, but I'm not even going to begin to question how. I then headed down into the Royal Waterways, got this Mass Shard, and then did the most intense gauntlet room in this game. I was so scared. Anyways, I then saved this grub, and then finally, after looking for a trillion years, I found the area I was looking for. I then proceeded to kill Fluke Marm, and then get Fluke Nest. I then broke this wall, headed up into this big lard area, and went through, and then I unlocked the God Seeker. I then grabbed the God Tuner, which adds an extra %. And then proceeded outwards back to City of Tears. I then headed to Resting Grounds, where I then got Dream Wielder from Seer. I then headed to Green Path, and then got Shape of Un. I then got this Hollowness Seal, and then I got Thorns of Agony. I then headed back to Deep Nest, where I then saved this grub, and then I headed into the Weaver's place. I got Weaver Song, and then went through the Galleon room, got these Lifeblood Hearts, and then started the Galleon fight, and then killed him. I then went back through to Mantis Village, gave the Mantis Lords a little bow, and then headed up and out, then dropped down back into Deep Nest, where I then acquired this Mass Shard. Then in Fungal Waste, I got a Wanderer's Journal, then saved this grub, and then this other grub, and then got Spore Shroom. Now I went back to Queen's Station. I then headed back to Dirtmouth, up the wall to King's Pass, and then I activated the Grim Troop. After that, I then defeated these 2 boulders and got Boulder Shell. Then I headed back to Resting Grounds, where I then fought Zero, and defeated him. Then from Seer, I got the Soul Vessel Fragment, and then got Dreamgate. I then went back to King's Station, then back to Kingdom's Edge, then down through this little area, and then I opened up the hive. I then proceeded into the hive, where I then saved the scrub. Got this big old bee to break this wall so I could get this mass shard. And then I started the Hive Knight fight, and then defeated him. I then got Hive Blood. I then proceeded to Green Path, where I then realized I could get Lifeblood Core. So then I equipped Lifeblood Heart, Joni's Blessing, and Fragile Heart. I then got the Lifeblood from the King's Pass Cocoon. I then headed down to Hidden Station, and then descended into the Abyss, where I then opened up the Lifeblood door, and then got the Lifeblood Core. Bars. I then headed through Queen's Station, up into Fog Canyon, and then went to Queen's Gardens. There I got the Love Key, then got this bench and took a nice little just rest. I then did the Mantis Camp Fight Gauntlet Room thingy. Saved this grub. Then headed up and fought all these annoying guys. Saved this other grub. Got this Hollowness Seal. And then fought even more of these annoying things. I then played with Marmu. And then they went to sleep. They were tired. I then opened up the Queen's Garden Stagway, which was the last one I needed, so I went to Stag Nest. I then got the Soul Vessel Fragment in the Stag Nest, and then went back to Resting Grounds, where I then did the Delicate Flower quest and completed my first try. That is not a lie. So then after paying my respects, I then bench warped back to the Grey Mourner's house. She then turned into a mask shard, to which I then collected to complete, yet again, another mask. I then went back to King's Station, then back to Kingdom's Edge, where I then fought and defeated Markarth. I then opened up the Love Tower, and then fought and defeated the Collector. Anyways, I then saved all three of these little guys, and then grabbed the Collector's map. I then proceeded to buy the lift that is in City of Tears. Then after heading up, I then went to the left to then get my second Soul Vessel. I then went back to Dirtmouth, where I then dropped back into Forgotten Crossroads. I then went back to Grubfather for a Pale Ore. I got a Hollowness Seal and a bunch of Geo, but I was only missing one, but conveniently there was one right next to it, and then I got the Pale Ore. I then went back to King's Station, and then back to the Smith, where I then got the Pure Nail. I then let the Smith live to discover his life, and then it was back to our old friend Lem. Then it was back down to the Royal Waterways, where I then dream nailed our sleeping friend, and started the White Defender fight. I then defeated the White Defender. I then headed through Ancient Basin, and then I got a Soul Vessel Fragment from the well. I then took this tram back to Deep Nest, where I did the Garnapete Pogo Challenge, and then got another Soul Vessel Fragment. I then proceeded back to the tram, Then heading inside of the Stone Sanctuary, I was surprised that No Eyes was here because I thought I had been here. I then completed the No Eyes fight, or defeated, I guess. And then for some reason went out and then to Moss Charger, which took literally 3 hits, as you'll watch. Well, maybe 4. But I mean, like, bro. Anyways, I then got this final Soul Vessel fragment for the final Soul Vessel. I then saved this grub. And then I headed back to the Stone Sanctuary because I realized, oh shoot, this mask shard is here. I didn't even know you could get another mask. Anyways, I then headed back to Dirtmouth, and then was met with my stupidity when I realized I hadn't bought the final mask shard from Sly. I then proceeded back to Queen's Station, where I then went to the Fungal Wastes, and then saved Bretta. Then back in Dirtmouth, I grabbed the mask shard from Bretta's house. And then it was back to Resting Grounds, where I then got an Arcane Egg and the final mask from Seer. I then headed back to Dirtmouth, where I then went to the Grim Troop, talked to Grim, where he then gave me Grim Child. And then there it was, 100% completion. I honestly couldn't believe it because I thought you needed full Grim Child for 1%, but no, it just gives it to you. I then headed to the Black Egg Temple, and now it was time to fight the Hollow Knight. I'm leaving this completely unedited, so sit back and enjoy. And that was my completion of Hollow Knight Steel Soul 100%. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching the video. These videos take me a long time to make, so if you enjoyed it, please make sure to drop a like and subscribe. I know I hadn't uploaded in a while, but I do have more content coming out soon, so stay tuned for that. Anyways, have a great day.